from a deflated ball to a referee taking bribes.
Did they deflate footballs during their championship game?
These are the wildest times NFL referees were caught cheating. Des Bryant's non-catch moment still gives the Cowboys some sort of PTSD. It was the 2014 divisional playoff game between the Cowboys and the Packers. And with just over 4 minutes left on the clock, Tony Romo threw a bomb to Des Bryant on 4th down. Bryant leapt into the air, grabbed the ball, and made what any reasonable person would call an incredible catch. But, of course, reasonable wasn't in the vocabulary of the officials that day. As soon as Bryant went to the ground, the refs got busy dissecting the play like they were surgeons. And in a decision that sent shockwaves through the football world, they decided that Des hadn't really caught the ball. Why? Well, apparently, the ball moved an inch or two as he extended toward the goal line. Suddenly, that amazing moment was reduced to nothing, and the Cowboys' hopes of advancing took a nosedive. Fans, analysts, and even players were left scratching their heads, thinking, wait, that's not a catch? Really? The ruling sparked a debate that lasted for years, one that ultimately led the NFL to revise the catch rule entirely. But the damage was done, and Bryant's would-be catch remains a prime example of officiating getting a bit too tangled up in technicalities. Whatever that was, the catch that wasn't is now etched in NFL infamy, and Cowboys fans still think they were robbed of a shot at glory. The refs weren't exactly heroes in the Des Bryant saga, but that's just the warm-up. Next, we dive into Bountygate, where missed whistles turned dangerous hits into a full-blown scandal. Remember the infamous Bountygate scandal of 2012? A saga that proved some hits were just a little too good to be true. While that alone was enough to send shockwaves through the NFL, the real eyebrow raiser was the officiating, or lack thereof. Watching some of these games, you couldn't help but notice that the refs seemed to conveniently turn a blind eye to certain, let's call them overzealous hits. Quarterbacks getting pummeled well after the throw, receivers taken out midair, yet somehow the flags stayed firmly in the refs' pockets. Selective enforcement, anyone? It left fans, analysts, and honestly anyone with a working set of eyes wondering if the officials were on the same bounty payroll. The hits were vicious, and the silence from the referees was deafening. Were they complicit or just clueless? Either way, after the hammer of justice descended on everyone involved and the refs were left out, it was clear that the refs weren't in on it. But then when the game gets just a little too dirty and the people meant to keep it clean look the other way, it does make you wonder. With Bountygate, it seemed like the refs conveniently lost their whistles. But for Pete Morelli in 2015, it felt like he found all of them at once, especially when the 49ers were on the field. Who could forget Pete Morelli's magical officiating performance during the 2015 matchup between the 49ers and the Cardinals? And by magical, we mean that penalties seem to appear out of thin air, especially against the 49ers. 13 penalties in one game to be exact. Now, we all know that football isn't exactly a penalty-free sport, but the sheer number of flags thrown against San Francisco left fans shaking their heads and questioning if the refs were seeing ghosts. It wasn't just the quantity, though. It was the timing, the nature, and the fact that many of these penalties felt, let's say, debatable at best. It was almost as if every time the 49ers started to gain a little momentum, there was Morelli's crew, ready to step in with yet another yellow flag to bring things crashing down. The Cardinals, meanwhile, seemed to glide through the game untouched, which only added to the suspicion. Was it incompetence, or did Morelli and his team have some vested interest in tilting the scales? The frustration boiled over so much that 49ers fans took action. They actually created a petition to ban Morelli from officiating any more of their games. Of course, the NFL didn't officially endorse the idea that Morelli's crew was biased, but the damage was done. Fans had already made up their minds, and Morelli became a sort of villain in 49ers lore. Was it just a bad day for the Zebras, or something more sinister? One thing's for sure, that game left a sour taste in the mouths of San Francisco faithful, who couldn't help but feel like they were playing against more than just the Cardinals that day. If you thought Pete Morelli had a knack for questionable calls, wait till we rewind to 2012, when a crew of refs turned every game into a masterclass in officiating chaos. The replacement refs era of 2012 was an era that proved sometimes the substitutes just aren't ready for the big leagues. Picture this, the NFL's regular referees were locked out, and suddenly, a crew of replacements was put in charge of the biggest games in America. It was like watching someone try to land a plane with a manual and zero training. It got messy fast, and boy did the mistakes pile up. Extra time given to teams, phantom penalties, missed calls, you name it. They botched it. One of the more surreal moments was watching refs give extra plays to teams, almost as if they were handing out free samples. It wasn't long before players, coaches, and fans started openly questioning whether these guys even knew the rule book. And to be fair, who could blame them? The games felt less like professional sports and more like an experiment in chaos theory. Teams were getting penalized, then unpenalized. Crucial decisions were flipped on a whim, and every game seemed to end with players arguing in disbelief. The most infamous of these blunders was the Hail Mary between the Packers and Seahawks, a game that ended with two refs giving completely contradictory signals. The Hail Mary is the play that forever cemented the replacement refs era in NFL history as an experiment gone horribly wrong. It was the Packers versus the Seahawks in 2012, and what should have been a dramatic final play turned into one of the most confusing moments the league had ever seen. Russell Wilson launched a desperate Hail Mary into the end zone. As the ball descended, it was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Packers safety M.D. Jennings and Seahawks receiver Golden Tate both went up for it. Jennings clearly snagged the ball, but Tate, well, he had one hand on it. This is where things got interesting. Two replacement refs ran over, one signaling a touchdown and the other calling for a touchback. And what did we end up with? Chaos. The call on the field stood as a touchdown for the Seahawks, and Lambeau Field was left in stunned silence, while Seattle celebrated a win that even some of their own fans had a hard time believing. It wasn't just a bad call, it was the kind of call that makes you wonder if the refs had ever watched a game of football before, let alone officiated one. The backlash was instant and intense. Fans, analysts, and even players took to social media to express their disbelief, calling out the incompetence that had plagued the replacement officials all season. And it worked. Just days later, the NFL scrambled to strike a deal and bring the regular officials back, proving that even the league couldn't deny that things had spiraled out of control. The Hail Mary accelerated the return of the professionals, but not before it earned a permanent place in the history of NFL officiating blunders. Was it just an experience or something more laughably misguided? Either way, it's a play that still leaves Packer fans seeing red, and Seahawks fans, well, maybe a little sheepish. After the Hail Mary, you'd think the refs might have learned their lesson about game-changing blunders. But in 2014, the Lions found out the hard way that somehow flags just magically disappear, especially when the Cowboys are involved. The 2014 playoff matchup between the Lions and Cowboys was a game that went from competitive to controversial in just one snap. It was late in the fourth quarter, with the Lions leading and facing a crucial third down. Matthew Stafford threw a pass to tight end Brandon Pettigrew, who was clearly interfered with by Cowboys linebacker Anthony Hitchens. The referee threw the flag for pass interference, and for a moment, it seemed like the Lions were set to move the chains. But as they suddenly got a case of cold feet, the officials decided to pick up the flag. No penalty, no explanation, just nothing. To say this decision raised a few eyebrows would be an understatement. The Lions, their fans, and pretty much anyone with a decent view of the TV screen were left dumbfounded. The call reversal was like a magic trick. 1 second the flag was there, the next it was gone. And so were the Lions' hopes of advancing. Naturally, accusations of bias toward the Cowboys came rolling in, especially given the fact that Dallas was, let's say, a favorite when it came to ratings and hype. Was it just coincidental indecisiveness? Or did the officials have a bit more interest in keeping America's team in the spotlight? The outrage that followed was swift and relentless. Bleacher Report and other sports outlets called it out, dissecting the incident from every possible angle, with fans feeling robbed of what could have been a fair ending. In the end, it's one of those moments that makes you wonder just how much influence the people in stripes really have over the outcome of the game, and whether sometimes, just sometimes, they might be a little too eager to help the star of the show stay center stage. The Lions weren't the only ones left bewildered by officiating decisions. A few years later, it was the Jets' turn. Facing the Patriots in 2017, when a touchdown reversal left everyone wondering if the refs had lost their touch. This game featured a classic officiating blunder that had Jets fans crying foul and the rest of the league shaking their heads. The moment in question? Austin Seferian-Jenkins appeared to have scored a crucial touchdown for the Jets, bringing them within striking distance of the Pats. But wait, just as Jets fans were about to celebrate, the referees decided to take another look. After a lengthy review, the officials overturned the touchdown, ruling that Seferian-Jenkins had fumbled the ball into the end zone and out of bounds, which somehow magically turned into a touchback for the Patriots. Now, if you were watching that replay, you probably did a double take. It looked like Seferian-Jenkins had control of the ball the whole time, and even if it jostled slightly, it was hard to argue that it wasn't a score. But hey, it's the Patriots, and if there's one thing we've learned over the years, it's that they tend to benefit from, let's say, conveniently interpreted rules. Jets fans were livid, and accusations of favoritism came pouring in. Was this just an unfortunate mistake, or did the Stripes have a bit of a soft spot for Brady and company? Whether it was incompetence or something more sinister, it was yet another reminder that sometimes the refs aren't just calling the game, they're shaping the narrative, one baffling decision at a time. If there's one thing we've learned, it's that the Patriots always seem to find themselves in the middle of a good controversy. And speaking of controversial moments, let's rewind to 2001, where the Tuck rule set the stage for a dynasty and left the Raiders feeling robbed. The Tuck rule game was a moment that Raiders fans still talk about in hushed, exasperated tones. It was the 2001 AFC Divisional Playoff, Patriots vs. Raiders, with a thick blanket of snow setting the stage for what would become one of the most infamous officiating decisions in playoff history. Late in the fourth quarter, Tom Brady dropped back to pass. Charles Woodson came flying in, and bam! The ball came loose. The Raiders recovered, and just for a second, it looked like Oakland had punched their ticket to the AFC Championship game. But hold on, the referees weren't ready to let that narrative take shape just yet. This was where the Tuck rule came into play. I'm talking about a rule so obscure, it made most of us wonder if the refs just pulled it out of a hat. After an eternity of reviewing the play, the officials somehow concluded that Brady's fumble was actually an incomplete pass. Apparently, his arm was tucking the ball back into his body, which, under this peculiar rule, meant no fumble. Now, to anyone watching, Raiders fans, casual viewers, heck, maybe even some Patriots fans, it sure looked like a textbook fumble. But somehow, the officials saw something different. It was almost like they were reading a rulebook the rest of us didn't have access to. That call changed everything. Instead of sealing the game, the Raiders found themselves backpedaling as the Patriots drove down the field, tied the game, and eventually won in overtime. And just like that, Tom Brady and the Patriots were on their way to their first Super Bowl. At this point, you're probably wondering, was it just a quirky rule? Or did the league have a vested interest in letting this up-and-coming quarterback and his storybook team keep their dream alive? The officiating left a lot of room for speculation, and to this day, the Tuck rule is a prime example of how a seemingly small decision by the men in stripes can change the course of NFL history. Conveniently for some, more than others. After the Tuck Rule game, we all thought we'd seen it all. But then came Tim Donaghy, a referee whose influence didn't just rock the NBA, but supposedly spilled into the NFL as well. The Tim Donaghy influence allegations were a scandal that crossed the boundaries of sports itself. Now, Tim Donaghy was already notorious for fixing NBA games, but the story took an even wilder turn when he claimed that his influence reached into the NFL as well. Picture it, an NBA referee with a gambling problem who's already brought one league to its knees, now suggesting that NFL referees weren't exactly above a little nudge here or there. The mere idea that Donaghy might have had connections to NFL officials sent shockwaves across sports. Everyone interested was left questioning just how deep the rabbit hole went. How much influence did Donaghy really have? And more importantly, could the integrity of NFL officiating have been compromised all along? Did these claims ever get solid evidence to back them up? Not really. But the speculation was more than enough to leave a lingering shadow over NFL officiating. It wasn't just about Donaghy. It was about the possibility that other referees, those trusted to keep the game fair, might have had hidden agendas. Tim Donaghy's influence cast doubts across the sports world, but it was nothing compared to the outrage that followed the missed interference call in the 2018 NFC Championship game. The phantom pass interference call, or more accurately, lack of one, forever changed the 2018 NFC Championship game between the Saints and Rams. This one was a doozy, folks. In the fourth quarter, with the Saints just a play away from sealing their ticket to the Super Bowl, Drew Brees threw a pass to Tommy Lee Lewis. And then came Rams cornerback Nickel Robbie Coleman, who decided to take Lewis out early. Like, way early. You know, the kind of hit that would make any ref instinctively reach for their flag. Except, well, no flag came. The non-call left Saints players looking at the refs like they'd just forgotten what game they were officiating. And the fans? They were absolutely losing it. I mean, this was as blatant as pass interference gets. And somehow, every official on that field decided to turn a blind eye. It wasn't long before the outrage turned into something more. A sense that maybe, just maybe, the scales were tipped in favor of the Rams. Was it just a colossal blunder, or was there something else at play here? The NFL later admitted that a penalty should have been called, but by then, it was too little too late. The damage was done, and the Rams were on their way to the Super Bowl, while the Saints were left wondering what could have been. And if you thought that was bad, just wait until Bottlegate, where missed calls led to a stadium raining down chaos in Cleveland. The Bottlegate incident was one that turned a game between the Browns and the Jaguars into a chaotic mess and etched itself into NFL history. It was December 2001, with Cleveland facing Jacksonville, and the Browns were fighting tooth and nail to stay in the game. With less than a minute on the clock, Cleveland appeared to convert on a crucial fourth down, and the crowd roared, ready for their comeback story. But then, in a move that was definitely sus, the referees decided they weren't quite finished with their part in the game. After a painfully long review, long enough for everyone to think the decision was all but finalized, the officials decided to overturn the fourth down conversion, calling it incomplete. The timing couldn't have been worse. Fans were already celebrating, players were lining up, and suddenly, the refs threw a wrench in the entire situation. And let's be real, why the sudden review? And why the decision to change the call after the game seemed all but sealed? As expected, Browns fans didn't take this well. In fact, they didn't take it at all. Within seconds, the entire stadium seemed to erupt, and the field was soon covered in a storm of beer bottles, trash, and anything else that was within arm's reach. Players, officials, coaches, everyone scrambled for cover as the Browns faithful expressed their rage. And honestly, who could blame them? After all, this wasn't just a typical bad call. It felt like the refs were rewriting the script at the very last second, robbing Cleveland of any chance they had left, from flying beer bottles to blown whistles. Next up, Ed Hochuli's infamous fumble call that left Chargers fans fuming and Broncos fans celebrating. Ed Hochuli's infamous botched fumble call is something that Chargers fans would probably love to erase from memory. It was 2008, and the Chargers were facing off against the Broncos in what was shaping up to be a thrilling down-to-the-wire finish. The Broncos had the ball, and Jay Cutler dropped back to pass. Suddenly, the ball slipped out of Cutler's hand, clear as day, and the Chargers recovered. Or so everyone thought. This was when Ed Hochuli, one of the NFL's most recognizable officials, blew the whistle and called the play an incomplete pass. To anyone watching, it looked like Cutler had clearly lost control before his arm went forward. But Hochuli's call took what should have been a fumble recovery and handed it right back to Denver. And just like that, all the momentum shifted. With a second chance in hand, the Broncos drove down the field and scored, ultimately winning the game 39-38. Hochuli, to his credit, admitted afterward that he had made a mistake. But let's be real, that did little to soothe the sting for the Chargers and their fans, who had just watched their victory slip away thanks to a blown call. But if you thought that a blown fumble call was frustrating, wait until you hear how the refs handled some mysteriously deflated footballs during Deflategate. Everyone knows Deflategate is Tom Brady's infamous affair with slightly softer balls. No pun intended. But here's the thing. While the spotlight was on Brady and the Patriots, me and a few more football enthusiasts had a couple of questions about the role of the referees that night. It was the 2014 AFC Championship game between the Patriots and the Colts, and after the game, it was revealed that several of the footballs used by New England were underinflated. Naturally, all eyes turned to Brady and the Patriots staff, but if you have a couple of cold ones and think about it a little deeper, you start to wonder, what about the officials? Shouldn't they have noticed something was off long before it blew up into a full-blown scandal? Because, the refs handle the footballs on every play, passing them around, setting them up, feeling the weight, the pressure. So how did an entire game go by without a single ref noticing that something wasn't quite right? Was it just an oversight? Or was there a hint of complicity in letting the Patriots get away with it? After all, this was a high-stakes game, and Brady was on his way to yet another Super Bowl. Maybe the refs didn't want to be the ones to derail that story. Maybe, just maybe, they noticed, but decided it wasn't worth the hassle of making a scene on such a big stage. The questions have never really gone away, and while Brady took most of the heat for Deflategate, the officiating crew walked away relatively unscathed, despite the fact that their job is literally to notice things like that. It cast a shadow over officiating practices and raised doubts about whether officials are sometimes willing to turn a blind eye when it benefits the right team. Was it incompetence, negligence, or something more deliberate? We'll never know for sure. But now, we've made it to number one. The wildest moment an NFL referee was caught cheating. Allow me to take you back in time to the coin flip controversy. A moment so bizarre, it left fans scratching their heads and players fuming. This was Thanksgiving Day in 1998. The Detroit Lions were facing off against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the game had gone into overtime. Now, overtime coin flips are supposed to be straightforward, right? One team calls it, the coin flips, and you either win possession or you don't. But this time, referee Jerry Markbrett managed to turn the simplest part of the game into a controversy that's still talked about today. Steelers running back Jerome Bettis clearly called tails as the coin went up. But somehow, Mark Bright heard something else. He claimed Bettis called heads tails, which, let's be honest, sounds more like a weird hiccup than an actual coin call. Without batting an eye, Mark Bright awarded possession to the Lions, leaving Bettis and the Steelers in stunned disbelief. Detroit went on to score and win the game, while Pittsburgh was left standing there, wondering what had just happened. Bettis was this close to telling Mark Bright to square up. Was this just a classic case of miscommunication, or was there something more going on? The Lions were at home, and it wouldn't be the first time a controversial call seemed to lean in favor of the hometown team. Mark Bright was one of the league's most seasoned referees, someone who should have been able to handle a coin flip without turning it into a conspiracy theory. And yet, the outcome left a bad taste in the mouths of Steelers fans everywhere. This just shows how even the smallest part of the game, like a simple coin toss, can go horribly wrong when the refs drop the ball, leaving everyone questioning just how fair things really are. Coin tosses, deflated balls, and outright corruption. These refs like to move funny. Still, they always struggle to keep up with some NFL players. I'm talking about players moving like cheetahs, and a guy faster than Usain Bolt. Click on the next video to find out the fastest NFL players in history.